It's been an amazing thing to behold, and we're going to be starting our rallies. The first one we believe will be we're just starting to call up, will be in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Beautiful new venue, brand new, and they're looking forward to it. They've done a great job with COVID, as you know, in the state of Oklahoma. We're going to be coming into Florida, do a big one in Florida, big one in Texas. They're all going to be big. We're going to Arizona. We're going to North Carolina at the appropriate time. The governor's a little backward there. He's a little bit behind.
The rallies will begin soon, my friends. And oh my, get ready for it. It was in part the Trump rallies that allowed him to defeat the all-out political machinery of the Democrat left that we saw with Hillary Clinton and the media just carrying everything they could for her, constantly advocating in favor of the Democrat over the Republican. We know that Trump's ability to gather a crowd, to create that energy, to go speak to the people was a large component of his victory that everyone said was impossible. And now it's starting again. Now, this isn't the secret weapon that means we don't have to be concerned about whatever else the Democrats are going to pull between now and then. You know that. This is going to be a tight election. There's no way around that. Unfortunately, the Democrats have 49% of the American voting population so brainwashed and so absurd in their beliefs, and honestly just so reliant on their overall ignorance, that it doesn't matter that Joe Biden is a quasi-senile, deeply unimpressive, not up for this joke of a politician. They don't care. They're going to vote for him anyway because not Trump. But I don't even want to look at the political matchup right now so much as just to say that last week I tweeted out, and the one nice thing about Twitter for people like me is that it creates a record for people to see of positions that I took a week or two or a month ago. So you can all go back and see for yourself. And I said, and credit to Matt Walsh, who also has said, and I've agreed with him, Matt Walsh over at the Daily Wire, and there are others I know too, but he and I had an exchange on this one, that they will try to just pretend that this 2-week period of mass protests, of the complete abandonment of COVID shaming over social distance, the abandonment of it. I mean, it just didn't happen at all. These utter frauds, these pathetic, intellectually cowardly frauds with no principles and no morals, they're going to switch around now. You cannot make this stuff up. They're going to switch around now and start to claim that, sure enough, it's a risk that Trump is putting people through by going to his rallies, and it's reckless. Oh, it's reckless. Get ready for this. And I predicted this. I mean, because it is so obvious that this is what they'll do, because they just don't care. So you better prepare right now for the onslaught of the Trump's rallies are literally the most dangerous thing on planet Earth right now think pieces from the, quote, journalists at Vox and HuffPo and CNN.com and these other dumpster fires of ignorance and stupidity out there. And they're not really concerned about COVID. They just are worried that if Trump takes his message directly to the people, Biden in the basement, not going to get it done. Not going to be sufficient for their plans to take back power. That's what they want. That's what they plan to do. That's what's going to be said here. Cory Booker, former presidential candidate himself, Cory Booker has said that this is very, very risky behavior here. Play 15.
Well, if this president seems to be rushing to rallies, and I'm praying for him. You know, I don't want him to be my president, but I was taught to pray for those, your adversaries or your enemies or what have you. I'm praying for him because he's putting himself and a lot of people at risk. And so if you're going to rallies where there's a lot of shouting and yelling, and if he's modeling not wearing a mask, these are dangerous environments. We have to be thoughtful about them and follow the dictates of professionals who understand this virus from a medical perspective. So I just want to say that there's a lot of folks who are telling us to do things. You know, I mean, this is a president who seems to seems to market extreme, reckless conspiracy theories and more that have posed dangers to people, from injecting Clorox, sticking flashlights in places. He it's dangerous.
It's dangerous. Does Cory Booker think that none of us have access to the internet? So we can't go and see that he had no such comments to make about the protests that are day in and day out, thousands and thousands and thousands of people all across the country. No social distancing. Does he think? Does he think that we can't see that? Oh, no, he doesn't care. Because they'll just move past it. The left doesn't care. They'll just move on to the next thing. They get to determine the focus of the news cycle, which is even more powerful a propaganda tool. What you cover and don't cover is an even more important decision than how you cover it in most news stories. Because there's just going to be the basic facts that you have to stay within once you've decided to cover something. But what you cover and what you don't, that's what really tells people who you are and what you believe. This is why, the super fraud journalists out there like the Coopers and the Tappers and the New York Times and the Washington Post, front pages, and the so-called TV journos out there, what they focus on night in and night out, that's what they care about. That's who they are. More so even than the tone they take, which always betrays the truth, which is that they are leftist activists operating under a fraudulent pretense that they're journalists, mostly so they don't have to actually defend their ideas. They pretend, oh, I'm just a journalist, man. I'm just giving you the facts. These are the worst people in the news media, but nonetheless, they continue to get accolades, go on the late night, quote, comedy shows. They're not comedy shows. They're political commentary shows with some jokes. And they're not even funny. But I digress. So they're going to say this. They're going to claim that there's that Trump is putting people at risk in unnecessary ways. And there's also just going to be a return of the COVID hysteria. They're going to be pushing this in late June and early July, when we know that because of the cyclical nature of upper respiratory infections in general, cases are going to be going way down, except for where they increase the testing. And, there's going to be an ideological investment in pushing as much as possible COVID hysteria while Trump is doing these rallies, because it depresses the turnout to the rallies, or at least it might. That's their hope. And also it just turns into a point of opposition. Biden's going to be doing his, black mask, dark sunglasses, walking around, socially distanced, talking from the bunker to people. And Trump is going to be out there actually holding rallies, and they're going to have to make it seem like Biden's the one being presidential. How do they do that? By pretending that he's being responsible. Remember, they have already established their hypocrisy on this, so they won't care. They'll just tell people what on their side, on the left, the Democrats. Remember, these are all Democrats, left and Democrat, simultaneous, or rather, same thing. They're going to say this stuff, and it doesn't matter that it's a demonstrable lie and that they are frauds. That will not matter in the least. So, what else is the administration doing that I think is worthwhile? Much of the movement right now, the Black Lives Matter movement, the reason it is called that is so that you're immediately, it makes a statement that is obvious, but that has as the subtext, when I say obvious that all people agree. There is no decent human being on planet Earth who does not think that Black lives matter. There's no, it is a test. It is an obvious and clear statement of fact. And if someone doesn't agree with that, well, then they're a deranged and an immoral human being. But they start with that because the implication is that anybody who's part of the opposition to the rest of the enormous and varied political movement behind the name is put on defense. So it's very similar to the game that is played with climate change. Do you believe in climate change? Yeah, but that doesn't, I believe in climate change, of course. I just don't think it's a problem, and I know that we can't control it, and I know that the people that are telling us that there's going to be catastrophe have been wrong over and over again. But yeah, there's climate change, sure. But it's just agree with us on point one and then you have to agree. We're going to assume you agree on points 2 through 150. That's what they do. And another example, another version of this is when you are supposed to say that there is systemic racism in the United States. You're supposed to concede on this point. If you don't admit this from the outset, you are admitting a kind of moral deficiency. That's the way this is all set up. But notice they never give you what is the evidence for systemic racism. Where is there there's systemic racism in law enforcement? Well, that's different than saying there are people who are racist in law enforcement, because there are people who are racist who work for insurance companies. There are people who are racist who are selling hot dogs on the corner. There are people who are racist of all different professions. So the establishment of some people, some individuals in a profession who have racist attitudes, or that's not the same thing as saying the system is racist. Here's a racist system for you. Harvard University discriminates against Asian American applicants. Asian people in the application process to Harvard University are graded down and considered less attractive applicants because of Harvard's diversity obsession, which is another way of saying Harvard is obsessed with non-white, non-Asian applicants getting additional consideration and a leg up on the competition, such as it is. But that is a systemic racism. The system is that there will be discrimination against Asians. In fact, if we want to have this conversation, affirmative action is systemic because it is the system dictating that there will be discrimination. It is affirmatively set up that way. So why do we all sit around? And I understand this. There's all this pressure. Agree with us that there's systemic racism. No, I'll agree there's racism for sure. Of course. And there's also racism against people of all different races, which gets left out of this. Animosity against a person because of their skin color is racism and is immoral. It does not matter who is the person, what the skin color of the person who holds the animosity is, and what the skin color of the person who is the recipient of that racist animosity may be. Does not matter. The left disagrees with that, of course. They say it's all about power dynamics, and well, they haven't spent much time in the rest of the world where even people of the same race but of different shades within a certain race, shades of skin color, there's racism that exists there. So how does that fit into the power structure and the patriarchy and all this other stuff? Racism is possible against any race, from any race. But they call it systemic, and we're all supposed to just nod our heads in assent. Why don't I get to ask for the proof of racism within the system? As in, the system itself is pumping out racist outcomes, and it is doing so on purpose. Larry Kudlow, God bless him. He's a smart guy. He's been around the block a long time. And I think he's just a guy. He just doesn't want to bend the knee, man. He's had enough. He knows what life's really about. That guy's been through. He's been to hell and back, and he's at a point in his life where he's just going to say what's true. So I'll tell you in a sec what he actually said when he was confronted with this question by a reporter. A journo being so brave.
Black unemployment rate remains essentially unchanged in May, when it improved for other groups like white Americans. Why do you think that is? Is that evidence of systemic racism in the U.S.?
No, I do not, and I don't believe there's systemic racism in the U.S. I'm not going to go into a long riff on it. Black employment increased 300,000. Did you know that? You did?
Yeah.
Right, so that's a big win. And the black employment to population ratio went up over a percentage point. That's a big win.
You said you don't believe systemic racism
I do not.
At all in the U.S.?
I do not.
You don't think there's any systemic racism against African Americans in the United States?
I will say it again. I do not. I think the harm comes when you have some very bad apples on the law enforcement side What was done to Mr. Floyd was abysmal. Abysmal.
Larry Kudlow refused to bend the knee to the journo. Good for him. Notice the question gets repeated because the journalist is so taken. Wait, are you really saying that there's no systemic racism in the United States? That's what he's saying, yeah. Wait, hold on a second, sir. Hold on a second. Are you really saying that there's no systemic racism in the United States? Oh, my gosh. And Larry Kudlow's like, yeah. Yes. Do you need me to keep? Yes, that is what I am saying. And if you look at, and really, I suppose it defines how you, if you want to define a system as anything going on anywhere in any realm, well, then, yeah, because there is racism, you could always say, is the American system racist? I mean, there's racism that exists in America. So is America responsible? What is the American system? You get into these semantics back and forth on what they're really even talking about. But if you're discussing law enforcement, discrimination by skin color is illegal for any law enforcement purpose. There's that you cannot. There's no racial profiling. There's all kinds of sensitivity training that's in place. There is nowhere in the law that makes it acceptable to be discriminatory or racist. And what is exactly the systemic racism they're talking about? I mean, here's a way of thinking about this. A strong majority of insider trading cases are of white men in America. Are insider trading laws racist? No. Right. It's just, this is just, there's a law that is race neutral, and the people that are violating that law just happen to fall into a certain demographic. Here's another way of looking at systemic racism, what the systemic racism claim. Men, as opposed to women, commit 90+% of sexual assaults. Are laws against sexual assault systemically biased? No, right? I mean, there's a law. You can't do the following things. And people who break that law are punished, irrespective of gender. So, if we're going to talk about systemic racism, it has to be more than just a slogan. Where is the systemic? Because here's the thing. If they can show me where the systemic racism actually exists, I want it gone too. I think that's terrible. But what are we talking about? No, it's all agree that there's systemic racism. Agree with all of our other policy proposals, because if you don't, then you're saying there's not systemic racism, and then you're a bad person. This is just about getting people to bend the knee. God bless Larry Kudlow for saying, nah, I'm not going to play that game today. Not going to play that game today.
We can't shut down the economy again. I think we've learned that if you shut down the economy, you're going to create more damage, and not just economic damage, but there are other areas, and we've talked about this, of medical problems and everything else that get put on hold. I think it was very prudent what the president did, but I think we've learned a lot. And I also would just say the fact that Congress, the House, the Senate responded with the administration in an unprecedented way to put $3 trillion in the economy. I heard you had Ron Johnson on this morning, and he said this. We discussed this last night, actually. There's only about $1.6 trillion of that money actually in the economy. So, over the next month, you're going to see over another $1 trillion pumped into the economy. That's going to have a big impact. We have the Fed program. We have Main Street, which is going to be now up and running. And we're prepared to go back to Congress for more money to support the American worker. So we're going to get everybody back to work. That's my number one job, working with the president, and we're going to do that.
It's the right move. Mnuchin has established a whole bunch of things here that we should take note of. One, And the president told me in the Oval Office, looked me right in the eye, said there will not be a second shutdown. And then he went out and told the whole country that later on. I should have probably tweeted it out as soon as he said it to me. But, it was really about me being able to spend some time with the president and give him my thoughts and, just get to know the man better. I wasn't thinking of it like a formal interview, and it wasn't a formal interview. That's why he called in the show a week later. But I got him. I got him to admit to I shouldn't say admit to agree that there shouldn't be a second shutdown, no matter what happens with COVID-19 and a possible resurgence. And here's what you're going to see: the left, if the economy starts getting going, they have such an enormous incentive to do everything they can. If they can't get another shutdown, if they get another shutdown, Trump loses the election. So that's how big this is for them. And think about what they've been willing to say, what the Democrats and the media have been willing to say for the last, 4 years or so. Trump is a fascist. Trump is Hitler. Trump's destroying the country. He's a clear and present danger. He's going to go to war with North Korea. I mean, they'll say anything that they feel like saying as long as it is damaging to this president. Doesn't matter how reckless, doesn't matter how unsubstantiated it may be. Whatever they have to say, they have said. And I think a lot of people who were just using that as a propaganda weapon against the president, we're now seeing really believe all that crazy stuff. So if you thought that there was a fascist who was a threat to democracy in the White House, and also maybe you're just being a little overly cautious, wouldn't you then have a wide open excuse to start the COVID fear-mongering all over again? That's what they're going to do. Forget about all the data. Today I'm saying, there are more states that are having, spikes in cases. Cases do not mean anything. Cases have to do with the number of people being tested. All the data you can look at shows you this. A lot more tests going on, more cases. What matters is hospitalizations and deaths. That's how you look at how much an area is struggling with COVID-19. And of the 50 states, about 40 of them are way down, and most of them are way, way, way down. I mean, here in New York, we have, we're counting hospitalizations in the hundreds. So there may be a bit of an uptick. I think it's unlikely, but even if there is an uptick, we can handle this. We're not going to shut down the economy again. I am angry every day that I have had so many rights stripped away from me by Democrat leftists and their little quisling allies in the media. I'm angry. I'm actually mad about this. And that's why I'm trying to spread the word to as many people as I can across the country. Do not allow your, whether it's your local news broadcaster, whether it's national media with the lunatics at CNN, or your politicians, to pull this thing again. We've already seen how politicized it is. We already understand that they use this as a weapon against Trump. And if they can shut the economy down again, even for a few weeks, even if it's another 15 days to stop the second wave, they know that will send the markets tanking, that will spike unemployment, it'll make everybody freak out, and then they'll just present us with Joe Biden, as if Joe Biden is going to be the guy that makes everything all better. Here's Wolf Blitzer, whose job it is to be on TV, looking like a news anchor who is perpetually confused. Here's what he says about what we should be expecting. Mark, play clip 2.
You think about where we are today, talking about another 100,000 deaths by September. We heard from the governor of Mississippi today, who said, while he wants COVID to be over, the data says that it's not. That being said, we're seeing more and more reopenings. Los Angeles County just announcing today that music, film, and TV production can resume on Friday, obviously with restrictions and safety protocols, Wolf. But again, as more things reopen, there are increasing warnings from experts.
So disturbing.
So disturbing. The experts. Oh, now they're going to start trotting out the experts again. Where have the experts been for the last 2 weeks during the massive protests and the complete mockery of social distancing that has occurred? Social distancing. Where have they been? I'm curious. I really would like to know. Oh, wait, Dr. Fauci is back. He's like, hey, I know I've been on vacation. I've been gone, spend some time at the golf course, social distance, of course, with a mask all the time. I shower with a mask. I sleep with a mask. It's all part of the mitigation. You got to mitigate. You got to make sure, someone coughs. There's like little bit of spit, spit in the air, and that air gets in your nose, and from the nose, it gets in your lungs. That's how this all goes, right? That's what's happening here. Here, Dr. Fauci wants, he is concerned about the protests. Play clip 8.
Yes, I mean, the most important thing, unfortunately, the report of the National Guardsmen being infected is certainly disturbing, but is not surprising. The issue of physical separation is important. Masks can help, but it's masks plus physical separation. And when you get congregations like we saw with the demonstrations, as we have said, myself and other health officials, that's taking a risk. And unfortunately, what we're seeing now is just an example of the kinds of things we were concerned about. So I wouldn't be surprised that members of the congregation that were there demonstrating could also be infected. And many of them would then go back to where they were, because not everyone was demonstrating in the city where they live. They've come from the outside. So it's the kind of things that we were concerned about. And unfortunately, we're seeing it come true right now.
Concerned and seeing it come true right now. Don't you think they could have been quite a bit more vocal about this? I also think that outdoor spread is so minimal that we're not going to see a spike related to this. But it doesn't really matter to them, does it? They'll find a way to tear. In just 2 weeks, it's coming back. In just 2 weeks, the market, investment, the direction of companies, a lot of this stuff is determined by confidence. So by undermining the confidence that the American people can have in their lives going back to some degree of normal, the Democrats can achieve their goal of making sure that people do not think that things are going to get better soon. And they hate that there has been a couple of weeks here while the protests were raging. We had a week or two where the stock market was doing very well. The unemployment numbers were better than expected. That's not the same thing as good, but improving relative to what expectations were. And then the president's out there trying to tell everybody, look, if you just stay the course here, do what we have been doing, things are going to go back to prosperous, great, an economy that's humming along, he says better than ever before. Play clip 13.
And I think that the economy next year will be maybe the best it's ever been. You can already see it with the stock market, how it's been going up, because you have a lot of smart people that are betting on exactly what I'm saying. Because the stock market is almost as high as it was prior to the plague floating in from China. It was a plague that floated in from China. Now they're learning that it may have been much earlier, which bears out exactly what I've been saying. You saw that word yesterday, that it may have come in a lot sooner than we were told.
And they're going to blame all this on the president, even as we find out that COVID-19 was around long before they even knew what it was, that this was circulating in the population in China and here in the U.S. months before we have been told as of last month. And I think we're going to find out that this has been spreading much further and much faster than anybody anticipated until very recently. And so that's going to be there's going to be a huge fight over this, because if they can, again, convince people, they can terrify people into the shutdown situation once more, Trump will lose. That's my prediction. If we do another shutdown, Trump is done. And what they're going to offer up on the other side is, well, it's just this. It's Joe Biden, who, as we know, is really on the ball, really knows what he's doing. Here's another moment of Joe Biden explaining how he would tackle things and show us the leadership that we need.
Rapidly rising in with I don't know, his just inability to focus on any federal responsibility.
Rapidly rising. I just, yeah, gurgling with Gergen's got a partner now. His name is Joe Biden. They're both doing the same thing. They both just kind of mutter. That's right. Put Joe Biden in charge, folks. Going to make everything better. Going to make all the problems go away. It's all you have to do. This is what the so-called smart people in our media are telling you. They make this claim. They feel no shame. Sorry that rhymed, but I'm out of time. We've got more coming up in a sec.
What is the plan up until November to make sure that people can vote, to make sure that everyone, whether it's Republican or Democrat, black or white, has the opportunity to vote without being in a line that's 6 hours long?
It's my greatest concern, my single greatest concern. This president's going to try to steal this election. This is the guy who said that all mail-in ballots are fraudulent, direct voting by mail, while he sits behind the desk in the Oval Office and writes his mail-in ballot to vote in the primary. This is a guy, you have 23, I believe, of his states have passed over 82 pieces of legislation, making it harder for people to vote.
It's going to steal the election. They're already saying it. They didn't even wait until we got that close to the election. Notice the pattern. 2000, Bush v. Gore. Bush stole the election. No, he didn't. 2016, Trump v. Clinton. Trump stole the election. No, he didn't. But they keep doing it. A Republican wins, gotta be stolen. Gotta be stolen. They cheated. They cheated. No, it's not true, but they don't really care very much about the truth, do they? Oh, and one more Bidenism, since we're getting into this now. He's also said, because he walked back from where the left was, which is defund police. By that, they don't mean actually defund police. They just mean take funds away from police. Oh, okay. I'm glad they clarified. Biden then said, look, I don't support defunding the police. And now he's saying, well, I mean, maybe I'll have to defund some police departments if they don't do what I say. Play clip 12.
I don't believe police should be defunded, but I think the conditions should be placed upon them where departments are having to take significant reforms relating to we should set up a national use of force standard. If they don't sign on to it, then in fact they don't get any of the federal money.
So that's defunding, is it not? Oh, I meant to get to this, and I don't want to lose this train of thought. The Justice Department. This is amazing. The Justice Department dropped charges against dropped the case against General Flynn. And John Gleeson has been brought in by Judge Sullivan, the federal judge overseeing this case, for an amicus brief. This whole thing is bizarre, and no one is being honest who knows the law is saying anything other than that. But Flynn's lawyers and the Justice Department, according to the New York Times, have sought to bypass Gleeson, the federal judge who appointed him. An appeals panel will hear arguments on Friday about whether to dismiss the case without allowing Judge Sullivan to conduct his review of the department's request to withdraw the charge against Mr. Flynn. Mr. Gleason's brief amounted to a step-by-step dissection of the factual claims. No, this is all garbage. It's crap. I can't read all this to you, but they're just lying about all this. The best thing, though, is that he also said that Flynn should not be held in criminal contempt of court for lying under oath when he gave conflicting statements about his actions to Judge Sullivan, a possibility that the judge had raised when appointing Mr. Gleeson last month. This guy actually is saying that even though the court forced a guilty plea by lying and cheating in the case, that's what they cheated Flynn out of his rights. They cheated Flynn by disbanding and discarding ethics that they're supposed to uphold at the Department of Justice and as federal prosecutors. They disbanded all of that. They disregarded it. And now, because Flynn gave a guilty plea, that, because he agreed that he was guilty, is perjury. But we're not going to charge him for that. This is a joke, folks. This is ridiculous. If someone holds a gun to my head and says, Buck, admit that you killed Abraham Lincoln, and I'm under oath, and I say, hey, I killed Abraham Lincoln, am I committing perjury? I've got a gun to my head. Oh, no, you mean the libs are such frauds. They say that written confessions should be thrown out, that videotape. You know what videotape confessions of their guilt? The Central Park Five. Videotape saying that they attacked and were part of a rape of a woman in Central Park. Very famous case from long ago. Oh, but they were coerced. Oh, but even though they had an adult relative present, even though they knew things that they could not have known unless they were there, the videotaped confession doesn't count. But now we're told that pleading guilty, while the government's saying do this or we're going to destroy your son, and we're lying about the evidence we have against you, and we're withholding in violation of Brady exculpatory evidence, that is an additional crime. There is no justice here, folks. This is not about justice, which is about what is right and fair and true and good. Nope. It's about get Flynn. He's tied to Trump. We are psycho libs. This is what we need. We need Flynn to go down for this. For what? Flynn bad. Orange man bad. Stupid, childish fools. That is what you have at the top of the Democratic Party and throughout the media and even at the DOJ and even people like this guy, Gleason, reviewing this case. Absurd injustice done to General Flynn.